Towns and cities were also the home of the middle-class merchants, tradesmen, and professional men. Often townsmen were in the league with kings against the power of nobility. The burghers looked to the monarch for protection, and he looked to them for money and political backing. Today's unions include National Education Association, International Brotherhood of Teamsters, United Mine Workers, American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, and there's several other ones. Okay, because of this problem, unions were formed to assist leaders. Okay, unions were formed to assist workers. The 1700s brought about the beginning of a very exciting time in world history, the Industrial Revolution. You heard that term before? Let's talk about it. Industrial Revolution. And this was in the 1700s. Workers were needed in the making of machines that would make other machines. Some of the outstanding names of the early days of the Industrial Revolution were Henry Maudslay and John Wilkinson. Maudslay designed a number of machine tools which were instrumental in speeding up and improving work. John Wilkinson invented the cylinder boring machine and was the first to demonstrate that coke made from coal could be used instead of charcoal in order to produce quality iron on a huge scale. Okay, so let's talk about that. First, there's Henry Maudslay. He designed machine tools for speeding up and improving work. Okay, so he designed machine tools to speed up and improve work. Speed up and improve work. And the other person it said was John Wilkinson. Wilkinson invented the cylinder boring machine and was the first to demonstrate that coke made from coal could be used instead of charcoal. Okay, cylinder boring machine. I'm going to put it here, cylinder boring machine. And it said he demonstrated that coke made from coal could be used instead of charcoal. So he said coke, okay, made from coal instead of charcoal. Wilkinson designed the first all-iron bridge constructed in England, and its factory cast the iron for it. So he constructed the first all-iron bridge in England. So this is the Industrial Revolution. Everybody is coming up with different industries, different inventions that's improving the way of life. Through brilliant minds such as these, factories sprung up throughout the free world. Okay. Factories are springing up everywhere. Although workers were pressed into service at increasingly growing rates, factory conditions during the early phases of the Industrial Revolution were very poor, and we talked about the harsh conditions. Safety was not a priority, and hours were slavishly long. Alright, let's talk about the working conditions. The working conditions at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. Okay, so working conditions. Safety was not a priority, so there's no safety. There was no safety regulations. It said children worked in factories and mines. Okay, they worked for low pay, and they worked in dangerous conditions. Dangerous situations. Such conditions bred a spirit of discomfort that resulted in the organization of trade unions. Okay, so we're going to talk about trade. Because of the working conditions, many trade unions were formed. Many of the early unions were Marxist socialist in their philosophy and sought to help the common worker by improving working conditions. So most of them were Marxist, socialist, in their philosophy, and their goal was to improve working conditions. The first really successful union in the United States was the American Federation of Labor. So there were several of them, but the most successful, the first most successful union was the American Federation of Labor. In 1881. It's an organization of trade unions. The AFL was organized as a union of skilled workers only. The first leader was Samuel Gompers. Gompers was fairly conservative, and his leadership was responsible for the stability of the union. Unskilled workers were first successfully organized by John L. Lewis. Okay. I'm going to put Gompers. Stability of the Union. And basically, Gompers made the Union stable. Stability of the Union. Okay, we're going to talk about other unions as well. Unskilled workers were first successfully organized by John L. Lewis of the United Mine Workers into the CIO, or Congress of Industrial Organization, in 1936. Okay, Lewis. United Mine Workers. CIO. Okay. Unskilled workers were first successfully organized by John L. Lewis of the United Mine Workers into the CIO, or Congress of Industrial Organization, in 1936. But this union was organized not by trades but by industries. So we'll say CIO. John L. Lewis. So Lewis. He's the one that first successfully organized unskilled workers. Organized the unskilled workers. The union was organized not by trades, but by industries. By industries. Two of the largest CIO unions are the United Automobile, Aerospace, and Agricultural Implement Workers of America and United Steelworkers of America, both organized in the late 1930s. Between 1952 and 1955, Walter Reuther of the CIO and George Meany of the AFL negotiated a merger of the two organizations, the AFL-CIO. George Meany headed the organization until he retired in 1979, and I'm not going to make you write all these down. But up to the middle of the century, unions had become quite powerful. Okay, so unions became powerful. Through bargaining and even picketing in extreme cases, unions gained considerable power up to the 1960s. So the tactics they used were bargaining, and picketing. Through the years, they have been aided by some significant federal legislation dating back to the Clayton Act of 1914, which exempted unions from antitrust laws. Other organization has protected the right to strike, to picket, and to organize unions. Remember, we said antitrust laws are laws which regulate or curtail business monopolies or dominant financial organizations. Okay. I lost my place. Other legislation has protected the right to strike, to picket, and to organize unions. So they become more powerful up to the 1960s. Until 1960s. Okay. Up to the middle of the century, unions had become quite powerful. Unions, however, have recently lost strength and influence. The recent decades have not been a string of victories for unions nationwide. Though there have been some favorable rulings for their members, overall the unions carry less clout than in years past. Congress has introduced laws which have kept the power of unions from getting too expansive. For instance, legislation curbing union power, such as the Taft-Hartley Act, forbade a closed shop. And we said that a closed shop was a workplace where only union members may be hired. And so the Taft-Hartley Act, talk about the Taft-Hartley Act, forbade a closed shop. Closed shop. That means that they can't just hire union members. I keep losing my place. An example of a closed shop is where Jack would try to get a job as a welder in helping to construct a town hall in a city. He's told that since he does not hold a union card and is not a standing member of a union, he is not welcome to find work at that construction site. A closed shop is where only union members may be hired. And states began to pass laws called right-to-work laws, banning the union shop. Let's say Jack did get a job and was working for a few hours when some union members cornered him and pressured him into joining a union. In a union shop, the employees are required to join a union after they are hired. The Landrum-Griffin Act attempted to curb some criminal activities of some unions. The union movement has benefited some workers. Okay, so there are benefits to the union. It has called attention to the need for safety. Let's put benefits. You know, what are some things that they accomplished? It has called attention to the need for safety and the need for better management principles. Okay, safety. It has made the workplaces safer. Better management. At one time, unions had achieved a tremendous degree of power since they were free to be monopolies on the labor market. They almost required their workers to go out on strike, and an industrial worker dared not refuse or cross the picket line. In recent decades, however, unions have lost much of the clout they enjoyed in years past. Unions face a mixed reputation. Through the years, there have been a number of cases of damage to the lives and property of so-called strikebreakers. Unions have often negotiated to make wages sticky, meaning they cannot be decreased. Because of this, there is little room in negotiation, and layoffs can occur when a business has to cut costs. Okay, so it not only has benefits, there are disadvantages. Disadvantages. It says there have been damages to life and property. They tried to make wages sticky, which means no matter what, you can't lower their pay. And since they can't lower their pay, a business has no other choice but to lay people off. So this causes layoffs. Unions have a history which can be seen from two different views. It is true that through the years, unions have improved a lot of their members, but it is also true that workers have been kept out of work by hard negotiations between labor and management. The good and bad of unions in the American labor is a constant debate. Go ahead and study this lesson. Make sure you understand all the information it told us about unions and about the working conditions in early years. Answer these questions and turn in your notes.